On Wednesday, 11th March, Union Home Minister Amit Shah finally spoke about the communal violence in Delhi over 24th, 25th February, in which at least 53 people have died and over 500 people have been injured. Now, one of the key things that Amit Shah spoke about in his speech in Lok Sabha was that authorities have used facial recognition technology to identify 1,100 people so far who were allegedly involved in the riots. He also said that voter ID and driving license data were fed into the system to identify these people, and in the end he also said that this points towards the conspiracy. Now, he only spoke about facial recognition for 60 seconds, but it is important to break down and carefully analyze what he said over the 60 seconds into 4 parts, each part corresponding with one specific concern arising from the use of facial recognition technology globally. So let's start with what Amit Shah actually said in Lok Sabha.
फेस आइडेंटिफिकेशन सॉफ्टवेयर के द्वारा ये सारे फेस को पहचानने की प्रक्रिया चालू कर दी.
The first, most fundamental, basic question that arises, that really forms the basis of this pyramid of concerns, is the legality of the entire exercise. Is there a law which is backing government's use, collection, analysis and sharing of our facial information? So the first point here is there is no underlying legal framework or law. Now we have the draft data protection bill which is in parliament, which also gives wide exceptions for surveillance to the government. And third is the question of the fundamental right, a violation of the fundamental right to privacy, which even the Supreme Court has upheld and said that if there has to be a transgression to this right, then whether there is a statutory backing, which again brings us back to the question of whether there is a law, where there isn't. Now this brings us to the second point.
मान्यवर, वो सॉफ्टवेयर के अंदर हमने वोटर आईडी कार्ड का डेटा डाला है, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस का डेटा डाला है और भी सरकारी डेटा जो था वो सारा अंदर डालने का काम किया है.
Which brings us to the larger question of the transparency of this software that they're using. What is the software exactly into which they have fed this data? Now we all know the quality of images that exist in voter ID photographs. Very recently, a gentleman in West Bengal found a voter ID card which had a photograph of a dog in it. So what is the level of training or testing that this software has gone through? Which agency has used it? Is it the Delhi Police? Is it the NCRB? Is it NatGrid under which it is being used? We do not know. This leads us to a larger point of cities like San Francisco banning the use of facial recognition for law enforcement. The EU has issued strict instructions to member countries to use this technology very strictly because of the fundamental potential for abuse of this technology, which is sort of now widely acknowledged worldwide. So legality is questionable. There is no transparency or information about the software used, which brings us to the next point about what Amit Shah said in Parliament.
ओवैसी साहब, ये सॉफ्टवेयर है, वो धर्म नहीं देखता है, वो सॉफ्टवेयर है, वो कपड़े नहीं देखता है, वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ चेहरा और कृत्य देखता है और चेहरा और कृत्य देखकर उसको पकड़ाएगा.
So essentially what Amit Shah is trying to say to Asaduddin Owaisi's point is that technology is agnostic or is blind to any kind of bias that human beings might have, which is again through extensive research proven to be a false assumption. Several extensive tests have shown facial recognition technologies to have rampant biases when it comes to identifying different races, when it comes to identifying genders, when it comes to identifying minorities. Facial recognition is often shown to have adverse impact on women over men, on people of color over Caucasian people, and also on minorities like trans people. Commercial softwares like Amazon's recognition, IBM, Microsoft have all shown very, very vital errors in the facial recognition software. So when Amit Shah says that 1,100 people have been identified, what is the level of accuracy of the identification that has happened, which brings us to the final point.
इससे 1100 से ज्यादा लोग आइडेंटिफाई हो चुके हैं और मैं इसमें बताना चाहता हूं 300 से ज्यादा लोग यूपी से आकर यहां दंगा करने के लिए आए थे. वो यूपी से हमने जो डेटा चेहरों का मंगाया, इससे स्पष्ट साबित हो गया है, जो बताता है कि ये गहरी साजिश थी।
But the larger question to ask is, with what level of accuracy can the Home Ministry say that all the 1100 people who have been identified are the ones who are actually involved in committing the violence or committing the murders or setting fire? Which is what brings us to the next point of false positives and false negatives, where people who have actually committed the violence are not identified, and people who may not have been involved in the violence but may have been mere bystanders were incorrectly identified. And this can very well happen because we also know for a fact through our reporting on the ground that many of these people had come with their faces covered, either partially or with helmets or with cloths, or their faces are covered in the CCTV footage. Delhi police in 2018 had admitted to the Delhi High Court that a software they had used had an accuracy of only 2%. London police in 2019 also admitted that 80% of the trials of facial recognition technology did not work accurately. For example, if we look at this image of this famous image taken by a Reuters photographer, shows this man being beaten, we see that at least 4 people have their faces fully or partially covered. How does the Home Ministry ensure that they can identify them accurately? And finally, if the Delhi police or the Home Ministry claims that they can identify accurately people who had their faces covered, then could they also identify these perpetrators of violence in GNU in January who came with their faces covered and have been photographed?